And welcome back to another episode of the Zero Empty Spaces podcast, episode 41, with Natick, Massachusetts, mall resident artist Kevin Baldwin, here from his beautiful space in the Natick Mall. If you didn't know about Zero Empty Spaces, myself, Evan Snow, and my business partner, Mr. Andrew Martineau, as arts advocates and community builders and creative entrepreneurs, started an initiative to activate vacant commercial real estate spaces so talented artists and creatives like him could have space to create and collaborate affordably outside their homes. It's provided a myriad of win-win-win benefits for the community. If you'd like to find out more information, you can log on to www.zeroemptyspaces.com. But the point of the podcast is to connect you with the talented artists and creatives like him that make the program what it is. So without much further ado, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself at a high level here?
Sure. I trained formally as a classical experimental musician, as a saxophonist and composer. I kind of just knew I wanted to do that forever, and it's probably the only thing I was good at in school, so it just kept going. Went to school for that, thought I was going to go into music education, and had more opportunities to keep performing, continuing to graduate school. Moved to New York for a while, Seattle, been all over the place. That kind of brought me, well, my wife brought me out to Massachusetts. She won the argument of whose family we were going to move closer to, that and the fact that San Francisco is very expensive. So ended up out here, and my musical career kind of broke into a visual art career. As once the pandemic started, I couldn't travel to perform, and none of my friends were traveling to perform. I couldn't write music for them, and I needed something creative to do, so I built out our guest bedroom into a studio. Started creating things based on what I know from music, and eventually things started opening up. My wife wanted the guest room back. I don't think that's actually true, but I use it as the joke.
That's a good one. That's how it happens.
And then saw this, and here I am.
So you obviously you are a creative, you are an artist in terms of being a musician, but in terms of visual artwork, so this only recently came on since the pandemic?
I had been playing with a few things, just the idea of how we read music and like what the symbols mean, and how we arrived at that point. Some composers and myself as a performer, I liked people who experimented with the notation, like how would I interpret it differently, or if they were writing sounds that didn't just fit into saying here's an A, play an A. The creative things they did visually, and I was really attached to that. So I had played with a little bit as early as, I think I started having the idea in 2015, but had some doodles and didn't take anything seriously.
Sure.
And then once 2019, I was starting to pick up, and then 2020 just kind of forced it to go full out.
You got handed the time and the opportunity.
I had nowhere else to go, so I needed to be creative somehow. I built a table and then realized it turned out well, but I'm not super good at woodworking, so then went hard at this.
So for those that, I'm gonna actually bring it a little closer to the camera. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your style and a little bit about what we're looking at here?
Yeah, again, so this was one of my earlier works. The first one I actually used color. I started in black and white, and basically taking music notation, breaking it into pieces and putting it back together, trying to represent something about music, how I feel, or improvising some element of music, and just taking those visuals, breaking it apart and putting it back together. This is actually the first one that I did utilizing color. And you can see a lot of the fine details and lines. There's a lot of layering going on, so it's just my way of thinking about taking what we're used to listening to in time and putting it in front of us all at once, trying to represent music and gesture and time in some way.
Could you tell us, from like a composition perspective, maybe kind of like walk us through the story of this piece here?
Yeah, these these are a bit more stream of conscious that I had to just start somewhere. If there's nothing there, that's the hardest part for so many people, is just to put something there. I had to make some random shape or something. So I tend to always just like start with a circle. I don't necessarily have a reason why. Based on where it ends up, musical elements, whether that be thin lines, might start coming out of it, structures. This one specifically, I started seeing a bit of the structures, much like if I was writing a larger piece of music, I might detail out like, here's a section that I'm going to do these things inside of, here's a section I'm going to do these things inside of. So I ended up with these diagonal blocks and these vertical blocks, and then seeing how they either were parallel, crossing each other. I was able to just kind of unraveling it from there to look at the layering and the complexity of how those shapes overlap, don't, and build that into the thinner line work. So it started much larger and then kept going in further and further, trying to add extra layers, just represent how that, at least in my brain, would
Sure.
exist in music.
And this is something that you could play, or maybe
Yeah.
not every single piece, but
Some of my black and white ones are a little bit easier
Yeah.
to recognize the exactness of either of those. Yeah, that one is one of the prints. That one, a bit easier just because it's black and white, like I'm used to seeing
Sure.
in a musical score. But you can interpret line work, just thinner parallel lines give off a feeling of steadiness, as the thicker lines that go horizontal across it can be faster, more erratic if they're crossing. So all of those elements, just I'm interpreting it loosely, so there's an element of, in the moment, potentially improvisation to it, but it gives off a air of music that I can interpret in that way. Yeah, that one I specifically made listening to music. A piece by Fausto Romatelli called Professor Bad Trip Lesson 3. And I sat down, I just did that in one straight 8-hour stint listening to that work on repeat the entire time. Minimal breaks, and just tried to get inside of it, essentially as if I was performing the sounds and trying to create something interesting and visual, a visual representation of the sound.
amazing. So this one was one 8-hour session.
Yep.
But I know you've certainly experimented something like this with color and even more detail. How much time do you think you put into this piece?
Oh man, I mean, I know that's only an 11 by 14. I probably at least like 40 hours into that. It's the meticulous line work and just getting a ruler and making one line, and then just, if I want everything to hinge on one point, the process of just so slowly making sure that I move a ruler to keep the center point in place, and slowly get every single one of those lines, making sure I don't smudge something. That's really intense, and I overthink, so I sit there and stare at the colors, and I've got a pad of paper and I'll make a couple marks and be like, here's the green, what does this look like against it? That doesn't work. Here's the green again, what does this look like against it? And just probably way too much thought.
The color is great, and I mean it is such a beautiful representation, and it's so interesting with your formal education background and training in one modality of art, how that has significantly influenced obviously the work that you're now creating from a visual art perspective. If you don't mind me asking, maybe on both sides from an inspiration perspective, who are some of your inspirations initially musically, and then who are some of your inspirations on like the visual art side of things?
Sure. Earlier on, like I grew up learning saxophone by playing jazz. Not a saxophonist, but one of my favorite being Charles Mingus. He actually wrote I played Barry sax most, and he wrote a really important piece called Monin for Barry sax that I used to just blast on my speakers and try to outplay my speakers. and it just taught me to have a huge sound when I was in high school. Usual culprits of John Coltrane and Charlie Parker, but as I was getting older, things that were a little bit more out, or free jazz. Coltrane still has free jazz, Wayne Shorter, a lot of really continuing. A lot of the influence that I have is just the people that I've performed with.
Musically?
Yeah, musically. Fellow students when I was in college, professional performances. I get so much more out of working with somebody else, and that the act of being on stage and doing it with them, there's a connection that I get so much more out of in understanding how they're performing, but also their physical instrument. Artistically, I knew, the big names of like famous artists in art history, but didn't have any specifics to go off of when I was starting. I just literally was like looking at, this is what music looks like. People have experimented with notation, Helmut Lachenmann, John Cage, people like that.
Okay.
John Cage would be a big influence. I think he's the perfect just perfect point where a lot of visual artists and musicians kind of connect to go, that was an experimental artist that performed music, visuals. So
it's really not that. I mean, I've never seen anything like this. I commend you for stepping outside of your, not comfort zone, stepping outside of your formal training, venturing into a new medium, experimenting, putting in the time and the work and the research, and then that's also now led to evolution of your work into some other experimentations. This one kind of blew my mind. You want to tell us a little bit about what we're looking at here?
Yeah, so this series, it started giant. This is going to become much bigger as I go here to do things this size. But I wanted to get something that I spend so much time meticulously doing things, and as performing and improvising, things don't go right all the time. That I spent so long trying to make perfect. Sure. I like it when things go wrong and having to adapt. So like this was the precursor, that there's some thin line work on there, not as much, and I used charcoal to try to perform it, create some gestures, and I roughed up the canvas so it would grab the charcoal and just not let it be perfect.
Oh, you purposely roughed up the canvas?
Yeah, so it's got the globs of paint, so that way when I go over it with charcoal, it would grab it, and some of the charcoal I can move around a little bit more, but those places I grabbed it, and that was really just embedded in there. I like thinking about time. I am a performer, so how things unravel over time, just like I was saying, I'm thinking about a musical composition and how you experience it over time. So this, similar in nature and how it was created, but this one includes copper powder. I mixed it with a little bit of paint to get it adhered to the paper on this one, but to keep it evolving over time, the pure copper powder is going to just patina over the next, I think 5 years, it could be longer, years at least, and it's just going to slowly patina all of the goldy coppery color to it. It's just slowly going to turn teal.
Amazing.
You won't always notice that it changed, but like, you think scientifically it's changing every single day.
Amazing. Not only is the work evolving, but the paint's evolving. So cool. And now it's been a beautiful process now watching your work evolve, just being in the program over this last year. You're continuing to develop your practice, you're continuing to develop your education. What are some things that are next for you? What are you currently working on? What's new in your world?
I'm always doing too many things, so some of that I'll just see which of the like 10 things actually sticks, and then that'll be the next thing. I'm currently, because previous graduate school for music wasn't enough, I'm doing a master's, MFA, I guess it's kind of a more interdisciplinary program at Massachusetts College of Art and Design.
Cool.
Doing the first year there, which is why I've got dozens of things going on. They're constantly challenging. I've got all my my cohort of other five students that we all talk and challenge each other. And,
that's great.
Yeah, so that's going, and some of that's going to be survival mode and doing the things that I need to for the program, but
Sure.
I know that I'm really going to be building out this series with copper, potentially bringing in other metals that will tarnish and do things iron and brass. So I'm going to be working on this series. Getting back into some of the music stuff as it opens back up.
Playing, teaching.
Definitely teaching. I've been teaching private music lessons for our local school district, and I call myself a roaming professor. They're like one-off jobs at different universities like Northeastern, and
Nice.
Previously teaching music theory there when there's enough enrollment.
Sure.
And yeah, as things open up, I haven't gotten as much into performing again. I'm sure I'll head back that direction. Yeah, but
That's a good direction.
yeah.
And you've been involved with a lot of interesting projects. There's one project here that
I forgot about it.
yes, no, can't forget about this one. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how this came about?
Yeah, so my wife is also a musician. She's a composer and pianist. She released her first commercial album, Permutations, available on her website. I believe it's just AnnGoldberg.com or AnnHGoldberg.com. I need to look that up, probably. But that's her album, Permutations, her first commercial piano album. It's mostly just premieres of new works that she commissioned, friends of ours, teachers. It turned out fantastic. One of the works on there is mine. I did it's called Graphic Score. There's a lot of similarities to some of the black and white works that I've done where there's loose music notation in it, some more specific than others. So she performed that on the album, which is also was used for the cover art for the album as well. It's also on Spotify, so people can listen from anywhere.
And it is AnnHGoldberg.com.
AnnHGoldberg.com, is that what it says on there?
Just to confirm.
I should have known that.
No, that's great. So, if somebody wanted to work with you, what are some things you're available for? Commissioning album covers, lessons, music commissions. What are some things that you would like, a potential patron to, connect with you about?
I teach saxophone and composition primarily. So certainly, if somebody wanted to listen to my music, that's almost everything's at my website, kevinbaldwinartist.com. Recently switched over from music.com, so that stuff's all there. I do commissions through my website there as well. It's hopefully all easy to navigate. I've gotten into some fun projects. I can obviously got to license the first album cover work and open to any sorts of collaborations. I'm working on a graphic score project right now, actually, for performers, building out notation in augmented reality.
Yes.
So that's going to be something, I don't know if that's going to happen quick and happen in 6 months or if that's going to take years, but it's in process. I have very, very small, half-failed prototypes. But yeah, anything around my work, I'm open to various ideas, performing concerts, commissioning new artwork, or new pieces.
And I'd love to see your work. Obviously, it's going to go in a museum one day, but we talked about potential outlets, music conservatories or music halls or maybe music schools. So, if you're a music teacher, or if you're a music lover, and you find a connection to the work, please don't hesitate to reach out to Kevin. What's the best way to email you or contact you?
Yeah, again, the website, kevinbaldwinartist.com. I'm on Instagram, Kevin Baldwin Artist, or email is kbaldwin77@gmail.com. I never updated my email from a decade ago.
So I still got the Gmail too.
Yeah.
If they happen to be so we're in Natick, Massachusetts right now, which is in the Metro West area, 30 minutes outside of Boston, near Framingham, Worcester. If they happen to be in this area, where are some places that they can see your work at the moment?
Obviously, here at Zero Empty Spaces in the Natick Mall. I have currently for one more month I've got a couple series up in the Natick Library down in the center of town, which is also right next to a mural that I painted on the street. So I've got a 30-foot mural. I haven't gone to look in a while, but we're approaching 2 years, so I don't know what condition it's in still, since it's literally on the asphalt and it does snow and we throw salt down, so I'm not. It was still looking decent back in October, a little faded, but hopefully it's still there, so that is still available.
We'll have Athena go check. Thank you, Athena, the Natick Culture Center District.
I should go look.
Yeah, no, definitely. And also, Kevin has a piece in our Zero Empty Spaces resident artist exhibit at the Louis Vuitton Innovation Campus, the former IBM headquarters down in South Florida in the 4700 wing. So if you happen to be down there in Boca Raton, you can feel free to see Kevin's work along with I think 32 other pieces at our own curated hallway of our resident artists. And we hope to be able to provide some additional opportunities in the future. Glad to continue supporting you. Glad to continue supporting the artists here in Natick. And the last question that we generally like to wrap up with, and you alluded to it a little bit, but to further expand, what do you like the most about having a studio to create in outside of your home?
I mean, one, it's forcing me to actually focus and not get distracted by the home and, be like, trying to start doing something creative. It's better to have to sit here and actually deal with the fact that I'm not sure what to do instead of get distracted by the dog needs to go out, or I heard the laundry, the washer finish, and force yourself to deal with the silence and dealing with that. It's been great having people be able to wander in and talk about things. I've even gotten ideas because of people that have come in. I was working on one work and could not figure out what to do with it, and somebody actually came in and made a comment about one of the things that he liked, and it was a really small thing, and I realized that really small thing was what was missing from several other places that would push things forward a little bit, and I did it. I don't even, he was literally standing here for 30 seconds. I don't even know what his name was, but he made a comment and I was able to just go from that comment. So I never really know where anything productive or interesting is going to come from. People come in and talk to me about music I don't know about, or so it's really interesting, just people that come in to talk and just having a dedicated workspace.
That's great.
Yeah.
And if a random person that came in and inspired the changing of his artwork, if you're listening to this podcast, please come back and say hello. Kevin wants to thank you.
I don't know who you were, but it was great.
Right, and that's one of the cool things, especially here. So we're in the Natick Mall. We're in the luxury wing next to, across from Tory Burch.
Louis Vuitton.
I believe this is the only art studio in the world located next to a Louis Vuitton. We're really grateful for the support of Brookfield Properties, one of the largest mall owners and property owners in the world. They, had some closures here with some of the anchor tenants and wanted to drive traffic and attention and activation to this corner of the mall. So they gave us an opportunity to activate this former beautiful Burberry store here, which we're so glad to do. We're now just about to celebrate our 1-year anniversary during Boston Design Week, a couple weeks here. We still have some space available, so if you're a Boston area artist, Metro West area artist, Natick, Worcester, Framingham, and you're looking for space to create and collaborate affordably outside your home, we've got some spaces here. We have artists that teach classes and workshops. We don't take any commission on anything that sells. And we hope to be able to expand more opportunities for resident artists here and some other locations. We recently just opened in Richmond, Virginia for our 28th location. And we're going to continue growing this thing. We're going to continue supporting artists, doing the podcast. We're just recorded our virtual reality walkthrough, which we'll publish as soon as we get back to the computer. So you could tour the space even if you don't live here. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm an open book. At 0 Empty Spaces on Instagram, at EvansNote13. You feel free to email us, info@zeroemptyspaces.com. And we hope to see you at one of the spaces here. Maybe see you at one of Kevin's upcoming performances. Maybe when he wins a Grammy one day. Oh, no. And then also, lastly, I'll just mention, it does have prints available. So while the originals, deservedly so, are priced accordingly, prints make great gifts, and you never know how giving the gift of art could inspire maybe an aspiring musician, artist, creative to pursue their craft, their passion, their creative outlet, or maybe a new art form altogether. So we really appreciate you taking the time. Also, I'm glad that we were able to give your wife back her spare bedroom. And we'll see you on the next podcast.
Thank you.
Cheers.